Welcome to Doug in Exile. I have an incredible guest, Forrest Dickison from Moscow, Idaho, illustrator, storyteller. This is one of the more important shows I could do. This hits very close to home. So before I get to you, there's a link in the description that I hope you guys will check out. Right there, it takes you straight to the Amazon page where you can buy this book. It's $18 and you get free delivery. So I'm starting there. That takes care of business. Guys, you can trust me on this. Buy it. And I'm talking about old men, old women, young women. These are your values on fire. And it's a masterpiece, in my opinion. I'm not puffing you up, buddy. I hate everything. You got to understand. I hate everything. And this is the kind of cultural stuff that I wish was everywhere. It would change everything. So thank you for what you did. I'm going to show, here's the book, Crispin's Rainy Day. I think the title's kind of weak, but don't let it fool you guys. This is a masterpiece. We're going to talk about how to read stories, how you write them. So I guess we're going to start here. You have 4 kids. Would you be able to write this book if you didn't have 4 kids?
Absolutely not. They were the catalyst, the test audience. Yeah, I ran this story by them multiple times around the dinner table, and kids are brutally honest. So you could instantly tell when their eyes started to glaze over and they didn't care anymore. So yeah, it was they were the reason I did it, and the first audience that kept this thing on track. So
okay, now we're going to go into the darkness. You're a Christian artist.
I am
a Christian illustrator. I've devoured a ton of your work, including you illustrated one of the biology books that my kids have used, Riot and the Dance, which has very realistic biological illustrations of animals and things by the great Gordon Wilson, a young earth creationist who I devour all of his work too. But your drawing is amazing to me. It's an amalgamation of a lot of styles that I see, and you have your own style. I've also seen your fine art paintings hanging in Doug Wilson and Nate Wilson's house. An amazing landscape painter you are. I just sat there and said, what is he doing? How is he doing that sky? So you're an artist's artist, and the style in this book, there's a lot of I've always seen Bill Peet in your work. Mm-hmm. He's a children's book artist who worked for Disney, was an animator on everything, going all the way back. And there's kind of a thin line whimsy to it. And then of course there's a lot of Miyazaki in this for those who are anime and manga fans, which is very contemporary, including your palette and the colors that you do. Talk about being a Christian artist. Why in the world would a Christian go into the arts?
Oh man, that's a loaded question. I went into the arts because I wasn't good for anything else. I don't think I had this ability, this gift. I didn't want to do anything else. So when I started, it was just I wanted to draw cool things. That was my entire perspective, and that quickly dried up in terms of like the why behind what I did. It didn't last very long. So I had to go back and figure out, okay, I know I'm a Christian, I know I'm an artist, but I've heard so many people talk about this in ways that are completely unhelpful, confusing, and just not actually practical. So then it was a lot of talking with N.D. Wilson, who's a Christian artist and
a great storyteller with a lot of wisdom and experience on that.
Oh yeah, and he's someone I could look at and see the word Christian and the word artist harmonizing. There wasn't this insecurity about one or the other. It was just that's who he was, and he didn't. It was all cohesive. His whole goal is they have the podcast Stories Our Soul Food, which is great. But being a Christian artist turns out you're just making meals for people. You're just feeding souls on their way to the grave. That's what you're doing. You're encouraging them, catechizing their emotions, affections, loyalties, pointing them to Christ by means of narrative. And that sounds fancy, a fancy way of saying you're just a cook in the kitchen making meals, mm-hmm. and that's it. And that frees the artist from this crushing cultural idolatry that we've been, artists are worshipped in this culture as these prophets from on high who go into the studio and do this magical thing that no one understands.
Chesterton talks about warning of the artist's affectation, that it's all this kind of high society character and the deep mad artist. And he just is one of the greatest writers of all time. And he just sat down and just wrote. He just knocked it out.
He called it the disease which afflicts amateurs. And I've held that close to my heart for a long time because I love doing what I do, but sometimes it's not all that fun being an artiste, because you just get buffeted by these emotional storms. And yeah, the artistic temperament is awful, not something that should be respected, worshipped, admired at all. It is all about the work.
It's fun. It's fun to make fun of, though. Go back to it's all about the work.
Yeah, it is. It's all about the work. It's all about the work as a means of blessing your audience. And once it becomes about the audience, then about the work, it's not about you. It's not about how you feel on any given day. It's just about glorifying God with the gifts you've given, which means at the end of the day, just sitting down and doing the work and not feeling your way through life and like just listening to your passions 24/7. It means killing them dead, burying him in the backyard, moving on, getting the work done, and being cheerful.
I really like it, man. I could sprue off that in 1,000 different directions right now because you do sit down and do the work. Artists are known for being kind of fruity lunatics, but you're a provider for a family. You don't have the luxury. I have 4 kids too. We don't have the luxury to sit there and just do whatever emotes out of us. That's kind of what the artist has been described as for the last 100 years. And it's produced some of the worst art. Unpractical, unuseful, unimaginative, uncaring art.
Yeah, and some of the worst people, too. I mean, if you're just making whatever you feel like making at any given time, those emotions, I guarantee it, will be at an all-time low by tomorrow because you're a fraud. You know that you're not this God that everyone thinks you are. And you could have done better on the work. And it's just, if your emotions are tied to your work, it's just an absolute hellacious existence. I
loved being a fine artist. I love the art shows. You wear a big fur coat and sunglasses and your hair's all messed up and you're just this big, everyone look at me. I'm the cultural wise guy. I'm going to lay down my paintings on y'all and I hope you can keep up. That's like a normal art thing. As soon as I got married and started having kids, I'm like, well, that's over.
Yeah.
Like I got to pay rent. At least you're in a mass media field, mass media being lots of these books have to be printed, lots of them have to be sold, which is why we put the link in the description. And you guys really should support this, not out of charity. You're going to get more out of this. I'll talk more about how to read these books because I think people kind of misunderstand I should say artists have played them for so long that they forget there are honest artists here to feed them something good.
Yeah. And especially in the picture book world these days, the picture book world is like fine artists that didn't want to do gallery painting ended up writing these esoteric poems that are illustrated that are meant to get a Caldecott medal or get prestige from the New York houses or something that are just confusing, boring, and generally sad.
Yeah, well, and if you were an artist who hid your faith and you went the mainstream route of getting a New York publisher instead of Canon Press, you would be up for a Caldecott Award for this book is amazing literature, but you will not get a nomination. You won't get the New York Times bestseller book sales. Is that a good tactic?
I don't know. I mean, I don't think tactics had much to do with it. It was just, I had some time. I needed to make a book. I needed to make a little money, so I did it. Something that Nate has always said, we live in a world where cream rises. So I don't have control over the judging panels at these fancy awards ceremonies or whatever. I don't have control over publishers in New York, but I do have control over the quality of the work that I produce. So, that's kind of been what I've done all along is make the best thing that I can make in the time that I've been given. And if it's good, then it will get out there. Maybe after I'm dead, but hopefully not. If it's good, it'll stick around.
Yeah, so be it. So, but you don't control. You're an artist, not marketing. So let's talk about the story. Crispin's Rainy Day. I almost can't even talk about it without breaking up in tears because this is my wheelhouse. This is my language I speak. This is the philosophy, of what does an illustration do and what does a story, the words are amazing also. But even this intro, this double inside splash page, for inside the book binding, that limited palette reminds me of like Diebenkorn and Cornwell from the early 1900s pile their illustrations. They had limited printing ability, so they had this limited palette. That's just an observation.
Yeah. And that's a direct nod to the NC Wyeth Treasure Island end pages. So
it's those illustrations. If you ever look up NC Wyatt's illustrations for Treasure Island, they're insane, and you really nailed the painterliness of it. But we go into the world of men, and your book, like all great books, has a lot to say about it, about family. I mean, I could apply this thing 1,000 different ways. This book is important to me because it's about excluding others, a guy who initially excludes his little sister because he's going to go on an adventure. And there's just a strong defense of women in it, which I think it'll go right over kids' heads, of course. But talk about the issue of men and women that you in the best fairy tale way talk about.
Yeah, the story, it started as me just wanting to draw pirate frogs. That's where it started. And then there was a boy jumping through a puddle, and then it needed to be a story, actually. So I introduced the girl, his little sister, Rose. And then it kind of just clicked, and it became, I wanted to write a story where a boy gets to be a boy without feeling guilty. A girl gets to be a girl without feeling less than, Today, it's like if you have a female heroine, she has to be a mini Wonder Woman, which is absurd. I have
a mini boy. Yeah,
a mini boy. It's like, is that Chesterton again that said, why would you take a first-rate woman and turn her into a third-rate man?
Yeah.
Might as well be Chesterton. So I wanted something where the girl, I wanted to write a story where the girl was not trying to prove anything to the boy, but the boy was not being, put down or trashed because his toxic masculinity was just too much for the space.
Yeah. And he acts normal. We're boys. I go to the cigar lounge. I don't like it when a girl shows up. And there's a defense of women. They cast a spell. They do something amazing to men's lives. Our wives and our daughters do amazing things to us. They change us without stripping masculinity and manhood from us. But another thing that's very Chesterton about that, by the way, and Tolkien did this too. The elves were always very effeminate in Tolkien's world. There were no female elves, by the way. They were all primarily male, but they represented the female mystery, magic, and wonder, which is the classic view of what femininity meant. So you go to modernity and you remove that feminine quality through feminism, right? That tries to make women men. Put them in the workplace, give them the vote, all that. Like whatever a man does, it's interchangeable. If they lift weights, we lift weights. This is also very Chestertonian, but you miss out on the half of the world of all mankind that is a powerful enlightenment, muse, wonder, very different than the way men see things. And a man's world is terrible without women.
Oh yeah, it's hopeless. It's ultimately pointless. Women come along, and this book ended up being a lot like a autobiography where I'm just focused on one thing, and then all these ladies come along into my life, and it is mysteriously.
They ruin everything.
They ruin everything and make it infinitely better. My imagination was too small, and then I got married and everything became so much better, and then I had 3 girls and it became that much better. And it's this mysterious glorification of, what our little plot that we've been given. The ladies come along and glorify it, exponentially. And so that's what I was trying to do with this book.
Yeah, and your story is one of the few that have ever championed that in a convincing way. Like that's where I think this is really a rare opportunity for people to get to read. I haven't seen it conquered, and yet everyone will agree that it's everywhere. The gender issues and what is the enmity between women and men, between what the feminist kind of project is trying to do to the family versus this, where it is actually a stronger reinforcement of who we are, including the male. He does rescue the girl.
Yeah.
He rescues his sister. That's a male thing, but she has done something amazing. And I also want to talk about frogs because, as you know, I'm a huge amphibian nut.
Yeah.
And so to see frogs in pirate outfits hits me in the heart. And I think hits there's a reason why boys like frogs is they're weird monsters.
Oh yeah. They're bizarre and it's hunting for frogs is thrilling. It's like this, like you're looking for a living gem, they're these little monsters that.
I just want to show them your detail here on the pirate ship, which is that's just a phenomenal illustration. And anyone who knows design principles, that's where she's throwing the junk out in that light beam there where my pinky is. That's strong silhouette. So all the design principles are there. Where did you learn your design, clarity of images, composition, storytelling, drawing the eye to a focal point? Where'd you learn that?
Books, the internet, and then I went to the University of Idaho and got my Bachelor of Fine Arts.
Mm-hmm. Me too. That's what I did with Point Loma Nazarene College. I was a Bachelor of Fine Arts.
There we go.
Which doesn't teach you a lot of skill, but they let you play a lot.
But
for 4
years.
I did
it, and yeah. So it was pretty good because it was 4 years of a really relaxed curriculum and zero guidance. So I got to do what I wanted, which was go online and learn about art. So that's what I did. And I didn't take too many formal art classes. I did a workshop here and there, but I just read books and constantly, compared my stuff to what I wanted to be able to do. And if it wasn't good, I'd keep going back and hitting it again. And then on the writing side, so that was the illustration stuff. I'd always just piles of art books, online YouTube videos. And then I think I took a class from you at Wordsmithy back in 100 years ago. You were out here and I don't know when that was, but I just lurked. I just, I knew I needed to be able to write something eventually, but didn't really know where to start. So I did that. And then
was that 2000. Nate made me come.
Yeah. Well, I remember you were working on maybe Earthworm Jim. I can't remember, but you were I could tell you wanted to be drawing comics instead of teaching me how to write.
It was probably 19 or 20 or somewhere in there. But the writing, my template is just all kind of normal storytelling stuff.
Yeah, and that was a total mystery to me. So I did that, and then New St. Andrews started a MFA in creative writing. So I went and I was one of the first classes there.
Very good.
So that was.
And I took a lot of creative writing in college. Also, the writing really it helps. There's a lot of storytelling in art that people don't realize. When we want to be animators, and we want to be illustrators, and we are comic book artists or whatever, you really are saying you want to be a storyteller. And so you have to teach the artist writing. And the good news is most of us actually know how to write better than we think we can because we've been submerged in it all along.
Right. It's a dark moment when you realize you can't just get by on drawing for the rest of your life. You have to go back and learn how to write again. And
you also can't control the mind and heart of your work if you're just an illustrator. You have to write it to control the intellectual property. So if a lot of artists are giving up their heart and mind by merely saying, I'm just going to write and draw, and I'm just going to draw, and everyone else I'm going to go work for a boss and he's going to dictate my story. You'll never get to tell the stories that change culture.
We need a lot of those artists because there's big productions that need hundreds. Hello Ninja was made by hundreds of people up in Canada that were kind enough to bring that thing to life. But I don't know. It was something I knew I needed to do. So I went and did that. And then the nice thing is that in the same way that drawing is not this magical, confusing craft, writing is also a craft. It can be learned. There's ways to craft a story that are old, have been tried millions of times and proven to work. So that's what I tried to inject the most normal story I possibly could into this book. And you mentioned the title was weak, and the funny thing is when I I gave it this title early on, and I thought Doug TeNaples not going to be impressed with this title.
That is funny.
But I liked it.
It's good. It's true. It tells the truth. It's just they won't know it because you're underplaying that he just has a rainy day, and really it's about the world blows up.
Then it went, and then I ended up keeping it because I did like the idea of once someone has a rainy day, the next question you automatically ask is, well, what happened? So it felt like it had this potential energies inherent in the title. And so if you come up with something
I will go back to the Amazon page for just a second because it has a subtitle, Crispin's Rainy Day, The Search for the Long Lost Lightning Blade.
Oh, wow.
That works better.
I don't know who did that.
I don't know either, but man, they knew they had to sell some books.
The marketers stepped in and saved me.
They did. So this is one of the little snobby things that I have. Let me read. They sailed on to a jungly place known as the Hungry Lands, but all they found were cannibals in hungry roving bands. They searched in vain on Lava Peak, where fire flowers bloom. And this is one of my favorite illustrations because it has a bunch of fire newts, a bunch of newts coming out of the fire,
Right.
salamanders coming out of the fire. What many of you of the audience may not know is that newts and salamanders have always been associated with fire. That's a classic from alchemy days, dark age storytelling. They would throw a log in a fire, and of course all the salamanders would come out, and they believed that they came from hell. And you get names like the big giant amphibian, the hellbender from it.
Yeah.
They also became a kind of a Christian symbol in that we go through the fire and it's about resurrection and all that. There's all these weird legends about it. So I just wanted to ask you about that illustration.
Yeah, I was originally planning more amphibious monsters that would populate the world, but I ran out of space because the story needed to happen. So amphibians in general are fascinating, bizarre.
I have two newts in a tank right over there. I've raised them my whole life. So I raise amphibians, but especially newts, my whole life because when I first saw one in a forest when I was 5, I knew there was a God. And I was not raised a Christian, but I knew there was a God. And I just said, whoever made this, I'm into that artist. He seemed like a mad God to make such a thing. They were magical to me. Like when you first see them, the wonder hits you.
Yes.
He shows off in his creation quite a bit.
I love that story. I think it's one of the best artist conversion stories out there. The newt that made it all happen. So yeah, it made sense to stick him in the fire. I think in Silverchair, where they open up the land of Bism, and Lewis, I think he populates that world down there with some fire salamanders as well. And there's edible gold and rubies that you can drink, and that has always stuck with me. I don't know why, but that's like you said, you're just plugging yourself into the wonder grid.
He is the medieval mind. The medieval mind had an imagination way beyond what we've seen, what they were giving to people. On C.S. Lewis, he said that any children's book that was relegated to just the nursery, that is, if it was just stuck there and that's all that it was good for, was no good at all.
Yes.
He was defending fairy stories as the kind of things that adults can enjoy. And that's where I enjoy this book as an adult very much. He also, like in this last political campaign, it was funny to me to watch people describe, Kamala Harris would call Trump Hitler and a fascist or whatever, and they would say, well, it's the boy who cried wolf. You've said that one too many times, and now we don't believe you. Or it's Chicken Little, the sky is falling. So they're referencing these old children's stories that are so true that we still quote them today. And so on reading these books, I'm going to tell you guys, this is why an adult can read this book also. They say a picture paints 1,000 words. And so it may look like there's not a lot of words on the page, but this is 1,000 words. This is 1,000 words. You're to meditate on it in a different way. The way that the modernist is taught to read a book is you just get just the facts and just the information. That's the modernist. I just want this text and give me, Pascal. And they give you just this raw thing. And that's not how you read art. Art has a lot of other storytelling to do. Talk about how long each of these illustrations take, because I assume that you thumbnail it, pencil it, ink it, and color it. How long does one page of illustration take?
Well, yeah, there's a ton of sketching before each page finally gets put into the last stages of production. But I think beginning to end, this book was around 6 months of writing, sketching, illustrating. But each page is it was thumbnails and then color script. So I did a really quick gouache color pass for the whole book. I wanted the emotional arc to be mirrored in the color palette.
Yeah, that's something that feature movies do. Every feature movie that comes out, they have a color palette that tells the story from beginning, middle, and end through just temperature and color and saturation.
Yeah, and that was if it was working at thumbnail stage, if it was working at the color script stage, then I was confident enough to keep building on that foundation. So that was just me trying to find my way to the end of it. But and then after that, it was pencils, and then those were all digital. I printed that out and then inked it traditionally because I wanted it to feel old, timeless, classic. In this world that we're just, AI googly eyes are everywhere. This book needed to feel like I was a dead author that had written it 100 years ago.
It feels it, and that's a compliment. That it does not consumed with modern fads and fashion. It is a very old book. And you're a very old writer and artist.
Well, I appreciate that. That's high praise.
Yeah, it is. I can't praise this book enough. So we're going to wrap it up with, once again, link in the description where you can just quickly and easily buy this thing from Amazon, which is the easiest way to get a book shipped to you. I hope you guys will panic and buy a copy for yourself. Or if you're going to read books to kids and grandkids, I think it's great for any age. I think even like troubled teenagers will find beauty. Because I know the teens that I know, they collect all of Miyazaki's work. They collect picture books and often children's books. All those New York Times Caldecott winners, adults have them on their table because kids don't want to read them. But this is a great for especially for kids that are starting to read. You can launch it on themselves. But I also like reading family books together. I think you point things out and there's observations to make. But also a kid could curl up and really love this book. We're coming into the Christmas season. There's going to be a lot of Amazon sales, and I would hate to see a truly great Christian artist and storyteller be passed up just because he's not some woke, dark artist. If you guys want to make a dent in culture, then this is one of the people that we need to be patronizing. And I'm actually really happy that you found a home over at Canon Press too, because just as a model, artists need consistent work to pay their bills. Most artists, they're not worthy of it. I wouldn't even hire most artists, but you are. And so I'm happy that you found a place that brings you consistent work, and that helps protect you from having to sell out everything that you believe to feed your family. So I'm very thankful for all the Canon Plus gang also. Ladies and gentlemen, Forrest Dickison with his book, Crispin's Rainy Day. I'm Doug in Exile.